Some objects are just creepy. We've all had that feeling, right? You walk into a room and a doll's eyes seem to follow you, or you see a painting that just feels a little too alive. But what if that feeling is more than just a trick of the light? What if some everyday objects are actually carrying around a dark history, a story that just refuses to be forgotten?
And that's really the big question, isn't it? Can a doll or a painting or even a piece of furniture actually hold on to something? Can it become a vessel for bad luck, for revenge, or for something way more sinister? It's a wild thought, and it's exactly what we're going to dig into today.
We're about to dive deep into the stories of four legendary artifacts. We're going to look at the chilling tales, the strange, and often tragic events that seem to follow them wherever they go. And we'll keep asking that question. Is this all just coincidence and spooky folklore, or is there something else going on here? Let's get started. And you just know we have to start with a doll. Our first case is maybe the most famous haunted doll in the entire world. He's a seemingly innocent toy, and his name is Robert.
So here he is. Robert stands at a pretty unnerving 3 feet tall. He was given to a little boy named Eugene Otto way back in the day. Now, the most popular story goes that he was a gift from a servant who was, let's just say, not happy with the family. The legend says she used voodoo to curse the doll as a form of revenge. Whatever his real origin, one thing's for sure. Little Eugene and Robert became totally inseparable.
Robert's story really spans over 100 years. He was Eugene's best friend for his entire childhood. But the strange stuff didn't stop when Eugene grew up. After Eugene passed away, the doll was found by a new family who moved into the house, and guess what? The chilling events reportedly fired right back up again, which is how he eventually ended up in the very public home he's in today. The stories about Robert are just wild. The Otto family said they'd hear Eugene talking to the doll in his room, but then they'd hear a completely different voice, a low, giggling voice, answer back. Neighbors even swore they saw Robert moving from window to window and no one was home. But the breaking point came one night when Eugene's parents were woken up by his terrified screams. They rushed into his room, and it was a complete mess. Furniture was thrown everywhere, and little Eugene was huddled in his bed, absolutely terrified. When they asked him what on earth happened, his answer was simple and honestly pretty chilling. All he said was, "Robert did it." And this became his go-to answer for years whenever anything went wrong. And get this, you can actually go see Robert for yourself. He's a major attraction at a museum down in Key West, sitting in a glass case. But the legend is far from over. Visitors claim their cameras mysteriously malfunction when they try to take his picture. And some even report strings of bad luck after they leave, especially if they forget to ask his permission first. Okay, so what happens when a curse isn't tied to a single one-of-a-kind doll, but to literally thousands of mass-produced prints? Well, our next story looks at exactly that. This is the strange and fiery tale of the Crying Children paintings. The backstory of these paintings is, well, it's a bit murky, with two really tragic stories floating around. One claims the artist painted a specific little orphan boy who was haunted by fire. His parents died in one, then the artist's studio burned down, and then the boy himself died in a car fire. The other, maybe a more believable story, is that the artist was just trying to capture the sad faces of children left orphans by World War II. Either way, you can't deny there's a real sense of sadness in the art. These prints got super popular in the UK. We're talking tens of thousands sold. But then this bizarre pattern started showing up in the news. People were reporting these devastating house fires that destroyed everything they owned, with one really weird exception. The crying boy painting would be found in the middle of all the ash and rubble, perfectly fine. In fact, firefighters started reporting this strange phenomenon over and over again, finding these paintings completely unharmed, often face down in the wreckage. So is this some kind of supernatural fireproofing? Well, maybe there's a more logical answer. It turns out the prints were made on this really dense, compressed hardboard that was treated to be highly fire-resistant. So while the wooden frame and the wallpaper around it would go up in flames, the board itself was just incredibly difficult to burn. A sinister curse, or just some surprisingly durable 20th century materials? You decide. Our third object takes us back to 19th century America. And this story is rooted in some very real and very dark history. This one isn't about a toy or a picture, but a beautiful piece of furniture that was born from an ugly, violent act. The story starts on a plantation in Kentucky. A master carpenter, an enslaved man named Remus, built a beautiful chest of drawers for his owner's first child. But the owner, a man named Jeremiah, supposedly hated it. He hated it so much that he beat Remus to death. Well, as you can imagine, the other enslaved people on the plantation were horrified and outraged. So, according to the legend, they decided to get their own kind of justice. They secretly gathered around the very same chest that cost Remus his life, and they performed a ritual. They used owl's blood and a secret chant to place a curse on the object forever. And the results of this curse were said to be absolutely devastating. It's credited with taking 18 lives over the next 100 years, starting with the owner's own firstborn child, who died as an infant. From there, a clear pattern of tragedy seemed to follow the chest. Anyone who owned it, or even just stored their clothes inside it, seemed to meet a premature and often violent death. The really bitter irony? The man who started it all, Jeremiah, he seems to have escaped the curse entirely. All right, for our final story, we're going to leap forward from a historical tragedy to a modern discovery of an ancient mystery. This is the case of Ötzi the Iceman and the really chilling string of deaths that followed right after he was found. So back in 1991, some hikers in the Alps stumbled across something incredible: the body of a man perfectly preserved in the ice for over 5,300 years. They named him Ötzi, and scientifically, he was an absolute treasure trove, giving us this unbelievable window into life during the Copper Age. But some people say he really didn't appreciate being disturbed. Not long after he was discovered, a very strange and unsettling pattern started to emerge. Rainer Henn, the forensic expert who first examined Ötzi's body, died in a horrific car crash on his way to give a lecture about the Iceman. Kurt Fritz, the mountaineer who led the recovery team to the body, was killed in an avalanche. And in a really spooky twist, Helmut Simon, one of the original hikers who found him, was later found frozen to death in the exact same area. Of course, the media went nuts and started calling it the Iceman's Curse. A lot of scientists, like the archaeologist Konrad Spindler, just laughed it off. He studied the remains for a long time and publicly said the curse was just media hype, even joking that they'd be saying he was next. In a really chilling turn of events, he died not long after that from complications of multiple sclerosis. Now, to be fair, lots of people involved with Ötzi have lived long, healthy lives. But this string of really bizarre, untimely deaths has forever linked the Iceman's amazing discovery with the legend of his curse. And just like Robert the Doll, Ötzi is also on display for the public. You can go visit him in a specially designed cold cell at a museum in Italy. A man frozen in time from a distant past who's now a modern tourist attraction with a very dark legend. So, all of this brings us right back to where we started. We've got a doll that gets blamed for total chaos, paintings that just won't burn, a chest of drawers born from a terrible tragedy, and an ancient mummy whose discoverers met some very strange ends. So, what do you think is really going on here? Are these powerful stories just our brains doing what they do best, finding patterns in random tragic events? Is it just a way to try and give some meaning to things that feel meaningless? Or is it possible that really intense human emotion, like rage or sorrow or a desire for revenge, can somehow leave a mark, an actual imprint on the physical world? Maybe the real question isn't whether objects can be cursed, but why we seem to so desperately want to believe that they can.